When Blueco handed over £2.5 billion to buy Chelsea, they promised a revolution, my friend. They promised a brave new world of data-driven genius, endless capital and financial immortality. But if you look behind the glitz and the £1 billion transfer receipts, you won't find a grand plan. You'll find a civil war. You'll find two private equity factions tearing each other apart over a £5 billion empire, while the soul of a football club bleeds out on the boardroom floor. Look closely at what is happening at Stamford Bridge right now. This isn't just about a bad run of form or a manager losing the dressing room. This is a battle for absolute control. On one side sits Todd Boehly, the public face who thought European football could be run like an American franchise. On the other sits Boehly and Clearlake Capital, the ruthless private equity titan holding 61.5% of the shares, pulling the strings from the shadows. They promised stability, but they delivered a £262 million pre-tax loss in a single year. They promised long-term vision, but they created a legal, financial and structural nightmare that threatens to bring Premier League penalties crashing down upon their heads. How does a club go from winning the Champions League to selling its own hotels and women's team to its own subsidiaries just to keep the lights on for PSR? And what happens when the men who bought the club stop talking to each other and start trying to buy each other out? This is the untold story of the £5 billion war destroying Chelsea FC. To understand the collapse, we have to go back to May 2022. Roman Abramovich was forced out. Decades of ruthless autocratic success were wiped away overnight by geopolitical chaos. Chelsea didn't just need a buyer, they needed a savior. Enter the Blueco consortium. To the media, Todd Boehly was the mastermind, the charismatic co-owner of the LA Dodgers, who spoke with absolute conviction about monetizing media rights and maximizing asset value. But the money, the real leverage, didn't belong to Boehly. It belonged to Clearlake Capital, a Santa Monica private equity firm managing tens of billions in assets, headed by Boehly and Jose E. Feliciano. It was a marriage of convenience. Boehly provided the sports management credibility. Clearlake provided the wall of institutional cash. They looked like a powerhouse. But my friend, ask yourself this. What happens when two entities with completely different motives share the keys to an elite institution? In that first frantic summer of 2022, Boehly appointed himself interim sporting director. He strutted across Europe, spending over £250 million in weeks, signing veterans on massive wages. He acted like a billionaire playing a video game. Clearlake watched, and Clearlake cringed. To a private equity firm, buying 30-year-olds on unrecoupable wages isn't an investment strategy, it's capital destruction. Boehly wanted quick wins to build a brand. Clearlake wanted long-term player trading assets with high resale margins. The seeds of the civil war were planted before the first ball was even kicked. When Clearlake wrestled operational control away from Boehly in late 2022, they instituted a policy that changed the football landscape forever: the multi-year contract loop. They didn't just sign talent, they hoarded human beings. 8-year contracts, 9-year contracts. They weaponized amortization, spreading transfer fees across nearly a decade to bypass UEFA and Premier League financial limits. On paper, it looked like financial engineering wizardry. In reality, it turned a dressing room into a trading floor. Imagine walking into Cobham training ground as a young player. You aren't joining a family, you are asset code number 404. You look around and there are 40 other first-team players sitting on folding chairs in the hallway because there aren't enough lockers. How does a coach build culture when half the squad knows they are nothing more than financial leverage waiting to be loaned out or flipped for profit? How do you demand loyalty from young men whom the club views strictly as line items on a balance sheet? And who pays the ultimate price for this strategy? The heart of the club. Under Premier League profitability and sustainability rules, PSR, selling an imported star yields depreciated profit. But selling an academy player, someone who bled for the shirt since age 8, counts as 100% pure profit on the books. Cobham became a farm system to subsidize bad choices. The human soul of Chelsea was systematically stripped and sold off to balance the ledger for multi-million-pound gambles that failed to deliver. By 2024 and 2025, the spending had breached £1 billion. But the results on the pitch didn't follow. Mid-table finishes, missing out on the lucrative Champions League revenue streams. The financial walls started closing in fast. So what did the private equity masters do? Did they scale back? Did they take responsibility? No. They invented accounting loopholes. Chelsea sold 2 of their own Stamford Bridge hotels to a sister company within their own parent group for £70.5 million. Then they sold Chelsea FC Women to another subsidiary of Blue Co. for nearly £200 million. Pause for a second, my friend, and reflect on that. They sold pieces of the club to themselves to generate artificial paper profits, so they wouldn't face a point deduction from the Premier League. It satisfied domestic rules on paper, but UEFA's financial controls don't recognize related party asset games. The result? A massive divergence between statutory accounting and regulatory reality. European football authorities looked at the true operational loss, assessed at over €400 million, and slapped them with strict settlements. They built a fortress out of legal loopholes and paper shuffling. But paper houses catch fire the second the wind changes direction. And that brings us to the core disaster, the total breakdown of trust at the top. Behind the scenes, the professional alliance between Todd Boehly and Behdad Eghbali completely disintegrated. They clashed on everything. They clashed on who to hire as manager. They clashed on transfer policy. They clashed on the multi-billion-pound stadium redevelopment that sits completely stalled. When a club is losing hundreds of millions, somebody has to take the blame. Boehly grew tired of being mocked as a clueless American owner, while Eghbali ran daily operations from behind closed doors. Clearlake grew tired of Boehly's public comments and unapproved media tours. The stalemate reached a fever pitch with both sides attempting to buy each other out. Boehly and Mark Walter explored raising capital to oust Clearlake. Clearlake, holding 61.5% of the shares, flatly refused to sell, asserting their power to buy out Boehly instead. Think about the absurdity of this moment. While managers are swapped out and supporters watch their club become a punchline, the men who own Chelsea are locked in a £5 billion game of corporate chicken. They don't care about the chant on the shed end. They care about IRR, internal rate of return. They care about private equity yield. They treated an English cultural institution like a distressed corporate asset to be engineered, restructured, and leveraged. Chelsea FC hasn't just suffered from bad signings or poor management. It is suffering from a far more dangerous disease: the total commercialization and dehumanization of football. When you treat a club purely as an investment portfolio, you lose the subtle, invisible magic that makes it work. You lose the connection between the supporters and the pitch. You turn a sacred local identity into an asset management experiment. Whether Clearlake buys out Todd Boehly, or this war drags on for years, the damage is already done. The money didn't save Chelsea, the money trapped them. How much further can private equity push modern football before the fans realize there is nothing left inside the shell? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Did Boehly and Clearlake ruin Chelsea, or is this just the tragic reality of modern football? If you want the truth behind the stories the industry tries to bury, subscribe and join us behind the pitch. Until next time, my friend.